because there's this is not going to be a particularly long episode, but there's just a lot of details. Bless you. Greetings, creatures.
I'm Rachelle.
I'm Kalie.
And we are
Paranoia Percentage.
We're just two girls who are a little anxious about our world.
We're fascinated by cryptids, machination theories, and everything weird.
So if you like what we do here,
Don't forget to hit that like button.
and subscribe to our channel.
All right, today, what are we doing?
Today we are doing a long-awaited episode.
I mean, long awaited.
Ah.
Long awaited.
It's been awaited since we published the
Simulation theory. Yes, we briefly spoke about this when we talked about the simulation theory. By the way, those are bomb episodes. Go check those out.
Yeah.
A lot of people really like those, so I think you will too.
They did get a lot of views.
They did, really. I think simulation theory is a really popular theory.
I agree.
But I briefly mentioned the Double Slit Experiment. I'm going to spell that out on the screen. Because when I say it real quick, it sounds a little different.
Yep. You don't want any misheard words.
Right. The Double Slit Experiment. Say that 10 times fast.
No.
As I mentioned in the simulation theory episode, the fact that this exists the way that it does may point to the fact that possibly we're in a simulation.
It's like 80%.
Honestly, our percentages just keep going up. Because
Every single day my percentage goes up a little bit more.
See, I told you the longer you know me, the more it becomes so real. I don't know why it just surrounds my life.
I had never even heard of the simulation theory before I met you. And now I definitely believe
But now you
we're
see
in
it
a
everywhere, right?
simulation. Yeah, no, I do.
There's a lot that goes into the Double Slit Experiment, so if you see me reading over there, that's why, because I don't want to miss anything or leave anything out. Okay, so what is the Double Slit Experiment? Is the central mystery of quantum mechanics. And this is real. This isn't just theory things like the simulation theory. It's all theory.
This is not one of our machination theories. This is actual science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so cool. The Double Slit Experiment is a experiment like the name suggests. And it shows that seemingly solid particles act as waves until observed by a consciousness. So the act of observing the particles directly affects their behavior. So imagine you have a single wavelength from a source of light, and I'm going to put lots and lots of visuals up here, by the way.
Yes, please.
Of course. All right, so imagine you have a single wavelength from a source of light, so a light bulb, and it is gonna shine through a screen that only has two slits, two openings, and then behind those two openings is a wall. So as the light hits the screen and it goes through the two slits, each slit then sort of turns into a new source of light. So depending on, how bright the light is, these will still stay the same brightness, but they will fan out to create two new sources of light. And as they fan out, that's called diffraction. So it is fragmentating into two sources. So one turns into two. As the waves of light overlap with one another, they interfere with one another. So take your fingers like this, the two sources of light, they're now interacting with one another, so they're going to interfere with one another. So on the back wall, on the other side of the screen, you can see this interference pattern, a series of light and dark fringes where the waves have either canceled each other out or worked together. So it kind of looks like little lines of light, kind of like your fingers. If you had paint on your fingers and hit them on the back wall, you will see mark, and then no mark, mark, no mark, mark, no mark. Do this experiment again, but not with light waves, but with particles, so something solid. In this case, maybe it's grains of sand. So rather than waves, the individual grains of sand will either go through one slit or the other. They don't refract like light does. So take this wall, you have the screen with 2 slits, and the back wall, just take the whole thing and put it this way because gravity. Put 2 piles of sand on top, or 1 pile of sand on top, and let them go through the 2 slits, and it's going to turn into 2 piles of sand. It doesn't interfere with one another because they're only coming out 2 sources, unlike light that will interfere with one another because it fans out. So do this whole thing again, but with atoms, like from an atom gun. And yes, those exist. They can shoot 1 or 2 atoms at a time. They can shoot a lot of them at a time. So you take this screen with 2 slits in it and block off 1 slit. So you only have 1 slit open, and shoot the atoms at it. And they're going to hit the back wall in the general shape of the slit. So kind of like a line across. Now open both slits. They're going to create an interference pattern like the light waves do. They behave like light waves instead of the particles that they are. Do it again, but this time just send 1 atom at a time. When you send just 1 at a time, they aren't going to have a pattern for quite a while, and it seems really random at first. But after a long period of time, they do create this interference pattern again, like the light waves. So in this case, these atoms, even though they're sent 1 at a time, it is not in fact random like it looks at first. When you send a whole bunch of them over a long period of time, they're gonna create this interference pattern again. So do it again, all over again. But this time, observe it. So in this case, in the experiment, there's a detector that will beep when it sees an atom go through the top slit. So 50% of the time the detector will beep, saying that it's been observed, that it's gone through. So the assumption is then that 50% of the atoms go through the bottom slit. If all 100% of the atoms are going through randomly and then go through either the top or the bottom, they're being observed 50% of the time going through the top slit. So therefore, 50% of the time they must be going through the bottom slit. In this case, that they are being observed, they do not create this interference pattern. They instead act more like the particles that they are, so they act more like the sand, where they split up into 2 lines without any light interference pattern. Do it again. Doing this experiment again. Leave the detector there so it looks like there's an observance, but unplug it. So there's no actual observance whatsoever. It just looks like there is because there's a detector there that looks at the top slit, but it's not actually looking, it's unplugged. There's no observance. These atoms will act like light waves again when they're not being observed, even though it looks like they're being observed. Look at the interference pattern.
It's like they know.
They know. So at first we can think of this as, okay, maybe they somehow, first of all, okay, backtrack.
I want to reiterate, this is science, this is real, this is not a machination theory. Mm-hmm. This actually happens.
This actually happens. You can look it up. Scientists have no idea why this is.
So cool.
But as far as we are aware, atoms do not have the capability to have any kind of consciousness about whether they're being observed or not. They have no idea.
But it sure looks like they do.
Sure does. Because we can't even make them think that they're being observed when they're not, because somehow they know that they're not being observed, because when we make the machine look like it's observing but it's not, they act like waves again.
Pretty crazy.
But you know what? You know something kind of crazy too? When we put this double slit experiment into a simulation, so we simulate this experiment without doing it physically. In this case, the double slit experiment is a physical experiment where these are real atoms being shot at a real screen with a real wall and a real observer. If we simulate this and have the same rules of physics that we know in today's world, it will create the same thing, which goes against everything we know about physics, which might help kind of point a little bit more in the direction that maybe we're in a simulation and there's something within the simulation that allows this to happen.
Nice. See why my percentage keeps going up?
How crazy is this? So this was a really short thing, but I felt like we needed to talk about it. And let us know what you guys think. Go research this. Go look at the reports that are on it.
It's crazy.
It's a lot.
Yeah. It's cool, though.
It is so cool. I mean, there's no real percentage thing to put on this because it's real.
Yeah, no, this is absolutely real. I 100% believe this is real because science tells me it is.
Right. I mean, we don't know why it's happening, but we can say for certain 100% that the Double Slit Experiment does exist, and these are the results that they're getting from it. And it's
amazing.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Okay. Do you have a percentage as to what you think it is? Why you think it's happening?
In base reality, as in like organic universe, we talk about that in the simulation episode. In base reality, I have no idea. I have no idea other than atoms have a consciousness that we don't know that they have. But how would they have that? They don't have a brain.
Well, we are made of atoms and we have a consciousness. Right?
Could it be possible that they're the reason why we have consciousness?
It is possible. We don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. What do you think? If we're in base reality, how is this possible?
I think that would make sense, that maybe the atoms have consciousness and that's why we have consciousness. I could maybe stake 40 on that. 40% on that.
Why, though? I guess my question here is, let's say they do have consciousness. Why would they want to pick on us like this? Like, do they think it's funny? Do they have humor?
Yeah. Legit, yes.
Other than humor and just like thinking it's funny to confuse us, why on earth would they?
It's absolutely funny to confuse us.
So I know this was a lot all at once.
I think all sentient beings have humor.
Man, I don't know. That's pretty good humor though. If that's what they have, yeah.
I dig it.
Yeah, I think I could get on board that they have consciousness, like 10%. You know.
Okay.
But 90% of this is just like, it's just simulation. Yeah, and there's something going on with the simulation that allows this to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, let us know what you guys think.
All right. Well, this has been a really, really short episode of Paranoia Percentage. I'm Rachelle.
I'm Kalie.
And we were Paranoia Percentage.
You can find us on Twitter at Paranoia Percent, Tumblr as Pdubs Podcast, and Facebook and Instagram as Paranoia Percentage.